If someone ever tells you there's only one right way to swing a hammer, you can just kind of in the back of your mind file that person in the broad general category of all hat and no cattle. The trick is learning to use your body with whatever hammer you're using to get as much work as you possibly can done in the amount of time you have to do the work, and not tear your body up in the process. Let me show you some different situations, some different hammers, and one consistent way to think about what you're trying to get done. A lot of this discussion is going to center around the fact that we're made of fulcrums. I mean, there's a fulcrum in the wrist, there's a fulcrum at the elbow, at the shoulder, at the hips, at the knees, at the ankles. We have fulcrums all over and then a long spring up and down our back. How do we use this machine, this glorious machine, to drive nails? Well, you use as many of the fulcrums as you can in each nailing position. Sometimes it's only one or two. For instance, you're nailing a trimmer to a wall or putting a nail in for a picture. Your shoulder is, see, my shoulder is no good to me at all. My shoulder is in one position. It's the elbow and the wrist. Mostly the wrist. Now maybe I'm nailing an electrical box in. The shoulder comes into play some, but I don't want to smash the box. So I'm locking my elbow in one position and just swinging a pendulum. You see that? The wrist and the elbow get locked and the shoulder creates a pendulum. Completely different. Overhead. You're nailing overhead, which by the way is painful. Ask a drywaller. This, again, my shoulder does me no good. It is in this position all the time. My elbow, but mostly my wrist. And let me just point out that my thumb was exaggerating the action of my wrist right there. I've heard blacksmiths tell me that if you put your thumb on the back of your hammer, you're going to wear your wrist out. But you watch a blacksmith who's at a finishing heat, taking the hammer marks out and doing something fine, that thumb is always magnifying the effect of his wrist. So as I continue to talk about these things, you got to realize you're using every fulcrum, every spring in your body to its maximum advantage in whatever position you're in. Now this is not the same as banging studs together in a wall assembly, but it's similar. When you're bent over and you're working down at your feet, you start it, it's the same thing. Shoulders locked, your hammer is on the end of a pendulum. And you're whipping at the last second to lash that thing in there. You're lashing at the last second with your wrist to just amplify what that pendulum is doing. Now let me belabor this point. The position dictates the process. This is a 30-inch stake. This is hard ground. This is a 5-pound hammer. By the way, it's a form setter. But you can see that in this position, I'm not bending my knees. I'm getting it started. And then gradually the arc increases, but it's really all right here. I'm not hunching down. It's just in the swing of the arm. Now, if it's a longer stake, I have to stand up straighter. This is more like working at a bench. Can you see that gravity is not helping me as much here as it was there? But as I get closer, I can start hunching into it, and I'm getting more action out of the whole upper part of my body. Now the situation changes. Let me put it on this side of the board. By the way, if the grade's too high, this thing gives you an opportunity to hammer in a new way for a new purpose. Whole body effort. Take the grade down. So it's all hammering, but there's not one right way. I got to put a nail in here. See that? Nothing but the wrist. Nothing but the wrist. Same thing. So this is an example of you use all the muscle groups you can, but you don't try to use the muscle groups that derail the process. You can get that on our website. You know, to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Well, to a man with a nail, everything looks like a hammer. Anything that has mass to it becomes a hammer. And the process is always the same. You decide which one of the levers that God gave you inside your body are the right ones to do the work. So a blacksmith can hammer different than a carpenter because he's working at an immovable object, not on sawhorses. And your hammer blow starts at your ankles, and you are or you can be. Now that's not highly controlled, but you're getting all of the energy out of your hammer that you can. And then you can drop back, of course, in a more conventional way of hammering. But the idea is that sometimes you use every resource that God gave you. Every situation is different. Everybody has a different amount of coordination and arm strength. Every position and every job and every size nail and every type of iron is different. But your body remains the same, with the same number of fulcrums and springs and muscles and attachments. And it takes self-awareness and situational awareness to know what hammer and what weight and what position and method you use wherever the work shows up, whatever your responsibility is, and what you're trying to get done at the end of the day and at the end of your career. Thanks for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work.